Some of the best looking bottles in my collection with gold flakes? Yeah, let's talk about it.
Here's some codes to save you some cash on your next Middle Eastern niche or designer fragrances.
What's going on, guys? My name is Neeb. Welcome back to AROMATIX. Today we're going to be talking about some of the best looking bottles in my collection, gold flakes, beautiful glass, and everything else. One night I was up until like 1 a.m. fragrance shopping. Big mistake because I ended up buying like 10 of these bad boys from the house of Atelier des Ors, all over Instagram, man. And with a bottle like this and gold flakes, call it gimmicky, call it whatever you want, I had to have them. And so I started researching a few of the fragrances and the scents and looked at a couple of the notes that I really enjoy. I saw some dates, I saw cinnamon, vanilla, ambers. There's some aromatic freshies, maybe something with like osmanthus, apricot, and I knew which ones to grab. So I ended up grabbing about 10 of the fragrances and I lived with them all enough to know whether or not I'm gonna be rocking any one of these anymore and enough to know which ones are my absolute favorites. Some of the favorites, like all times, they were favorite by like a long shot, and we're just gonna basically go ahead and rank them in terms of the top 5 in my collection. Before we get started, there is an honorable mention just because this is a little bit too femme. It's too femme for me, for sure. This is called Cure des Anges. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong, okay? But it is what it is. Beautiful bottle though. I saw notes of fruits. There's like blood orange, there's pear, osmanthus, honey, amber, carrot seed, and orange flower. And so I was like, okay, you know what? It does seem like it might lean a little bit femme, but I can possibly get away with it because I get away with a lot of feminine style fragrances and sometimes they're the most compliment worthy for me. Wow, that's gorgeous, especially from the back. That view is crazy, man. Well, that's not what she said, that's what I said. But long story short, it definitely went way too feminine. The osmanthus is actually extremely dosed up in this fragrance as well because it recreates this suede, almost like apricot. It smells genuinely like apricot. And it's also pretty sweet. The florals, the carrot seed, and that honey makes this one smell like marmalade. It genuinely smells like freshly made jam. It's that sweet. Molasses vibe style things. And so for that reason, I'm not that much of a fan for it to be on me personally. I got this like orange hookah tobacco vibes, like almost like with the actual head. Like the head of the hookah is orange and on the inside you might have some, you know, other orange flavored style tobacco. That's exactly what this one smells like to me. Not bad, but not something I'm ever going to be wearing, that's for sure. I can see a woman rocking that and it would be really nice in maybe the spring and fall time. So with the honorable mention out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with my number 1 from the house. And this is going to be, and it's Lune Filine, however you want to say it, okay? That's what it is. This is a 9.5 to almost a 10 out of 10. I wanted to say 10 out of 10, but I think for a lot of people, there might be a couple of notes that will pull them, you know, it's a little bit polarizing in just a very specific note, at least to my nose. And for the most part, it's going to be the dosage of cinnamon and cardamom. And it stays pretty consistent throughout a lot of the portion of the fragrance. So it's this ambery, woody, and vanillic style fragrance, very warm, reminds me of other fragrances like Baby Cat meets By the Fireplace, meets a lot more balsams, super sexy stuff. But like I said, the one thing that makes this one different and a little bit more polarizing is the dosage of that cardamom along with the cinnamon. To my nose, I get a little bit of clove as well, and there's a heavy dose of styrax. And basically what it smells like, the styrax note, is extremely resinous, but it goes in the amber territory or side of things. And that, along with Peru balsam and vanilla, just translates into an extremely resinous and dense vanillic style fragrance. Of course, if you're thinking vanilla fragrances, you can go floral, you can go fruity. This has absolutely nothing fruity to my nose, nothing floral. It's more so towards the woodsy, mature nature and masculine nature side of things. This one in specific also has that oriental edge, which for me just signs it and takes it home for me. So the icing on the cake. The combination of the cardamom, the cinnamon, along with that pink pepper recreates a slight accord of clove for me. And I think it also has the combination of some green notes. They don't specify exactly what it is, but those together, I get this cooling but very natural smelling or style of cardamom, maybe clove style vibe. I get the accord, although it's not listed. Then you start to detect a little bit of the woods as it starts to dry down, but it stays relatively ambery and vanillic. Super gorgeous stuff, and easily my number 1 from the house. Easily number 1. On to the performance. With Lune Filine, it will last at least 8 to 10 hours. It's pretty strong stuff, and it's not going anywhere for pretty much the entire day. A date night fragrance that'll last all day. It's beautiful stuff. And like I said, the cardamom and some of those woodsy nature or the woodsy aspects of the fragrance does live on through the most majority portion of the fragrance. As far as the occasions go, this is absolutely something that you want to do on like date nights or special occasions, etc. However, because it's not as dense as certain other date night fragrances, you can still get away with it on multiple other occasions. The cedar helps brighten and lighten things up, and it kind of does this whole passing off from the cardamom cardamom down into a relatively similar style, woodsy nature fragrance. So not nearly as dense as other fragrances on this list, and for that reason, it doesn't really get too much of a versatility, but as far as the versatility factor, I would give it somewhere around a 5 out of 10. So not really my first pick if it's like a warm weather, but something that you can, pretty neutral. I'd rock it in any season for me personally, but for it to shine the best, I absolutely would leave it for like fall and winter time as well. Springtime, you could probably still get away with it, maybe during the spring nights, but definitely date nights or any time that you want to impress somebody for sure. It has that Middle Eastern spice as well, so it depends on what you think the girl might be into or what you're into before the girl, really. Price point for something like this, on discounters, you'd be lucky to find it around 150 bucks, and for all of these, I'll put them down in the description where you can find the best price. In the number 2 spot, this is the second best Atelier des Ors in my collection. This is called Rouge Sarai, another fragrance that does the whole date night vibes, but a little bit sweeter and more sexy and mature in a way. If you like the notes of plum, cinnamon, and dates, you're absolutely gonna love this one. This is a beautiful fragrance that also has this very syrupy nature, a little bit more ambery and darker woody. If we were to translate them into colors, this would translate into a more cedar light style brown, whereas this one is more of a darker earthy brown. Almost gives me the accord of tobacco without there actually being it. There are notes of patchouli, some Peru balsam, some gaiac wood, and sandalwood, so thicker, denser woods along with that resin. That does help this one go more towards the earthy territory or side of things. So top notes of this fragrance include plum, cinnamon, and jasmine. In the mid, we've got dates, patchouli, heliotrope, and in the base, we've got vanilla, Peru balsam, gaiac wood, and sandalwood. This is such a beautiful fragrance. The scent profile of this is gorgeous. I would give this one a solid 9 out of 10. For whatever reason, I do get a slight accord of something like Parfums de Marly's Carlisle. It's just the patchouli. That's it. Don't let that keep you away from this, because that would be criminal to just sign it off as just another PDM inspo. No, it's far different than that actually. In the top, it has this pretty jammy-like natured plum, and there's a very significant dose of dates in this fragrance. And what it translates into is like this fruity tonka bean style sweetness, which Carlisle has, but it doesn't nearly go as fruity or as light as something like this. It's almost like a lighter and easier to wear version, and slightly makes it a bit more approachable, if you will. There's that note of jasmine and heliotrope in the top and in the mid, and I personally believe that it gives it this aura. This is a fragrance that you wear and it just envelops you. It's not something that's consuming, it's not something that's protruding in terms of performance or in terms of the way the scent profile is created, but rather an aura. You're gonna have a scent trail, you're gonna have a cloud, and that's it. It's definitely a date night style fragrance where when a woman comes in, she's gonna wanna lay her head on your chest and smell that beautiful sandalwood and dates. That's pretty much what it turns into. I wish the plum would last for a little bit longer. It would keep it absolutely intoxicating, but the opening is definitely alluring. It'll grab your attention if you're within range within like 3 feet. So the range isn't really that far. And then it starts to dry down into something vanillic, warm, woody, and creamy woody. That's the key word, is this dusted, creamy at the same time sandalwood. There's a contrast of patchouli, gaiac wood, and sandalwood, which all work together to create the whole earthy accord, but they all have different contrasts and different aspects to each of them. The only thing that this falls short on is performance for me. Mind you, this is an aura style fragrance, so for its purpose, it's phenomenal. It gives you what it needs to do, or it gives you what it needs to give you. About 7 to 8 hours of total performance for longevity. On clothing, I would say maybe 9 hours, but that's where I'd cap it. As far as projection goes, you really have to be next to somebody like 2 to 3 feet max. 2 to 3 feet, I would say 3 feet is pretty solid, because I did have a conversation with somebody at the 3-foot range, and they could smell me, and they said that it smells pretty sweet and warm, almost like hookah style fragrance, and there is some definite truth to that. To a lot of their sweeter fragrances, whatever it is, they definitely have a jammy nature to a lot of the fruits that they use, which is great in my opinion for date night style fragrances, and for all of these really. That jammy nature shows quality, concentration, etc. So that's pretty much what I think about that. So 7-8 hour mark on clothing, 9 hour mark. I sprayed it on about 8 to 10 times, honestly, and it gave me that much of a thing. But the scent trail of this, I would say, is pretty good, because the fragrance itself, the cloud itself, is pretty thick. You spray it on, you walk around, they're gonna smell you for sure. That's Rouge Sarai, but it's not overpowering or overbearing at all. That's in common with both of these. However, this one, because it has those lighter wood nature, it's definitely going to project a bit more than something like this, where this is just that enveloping nature, and it's like more like a cloud. So it's sophisticated aura for sure. Easily going to be the second place, and the price point on something like this is also 150. I'll put the best prices down in the description for sure, because I mean, it really varies at different times, so who knows what price it is right now while you're watching it, but check the description for the best price. In third place, this is Lune Filine Extrait. Yep, we're staying around the same ones, okay? There might be 2 more that I want to grab from the brand, but Lune Filine is one of the best in my opinion. Extrait is in third place because I personally like fun fragrances. I personally like fragrances that take me on a journey. Lune Filine Extrait is beautiful, but it doesn't have as many transitions as the original. Some people might find that it's a refinement. For me personally, I find that it's a less of an enjoyment factor. As you can see, these dents are pretty hefty for, you know, testing and wearing, but I spray the shit out of them anyways, okay? But Lune Filine, the original, has contrasting notes. You're gonna have different experiences. The shifts are pretty significant, and Lune Filine Extrait, while a fantastic fragrance, has much less of that. And so the differences between this and the Extrait is going to be that you're gonna get a little bit more of a fuller bodied fragrance with the Extrait, but much less of an experience and much less of contrasts. Note to the Extrait version is Tahitian vanilla. There's cardamom, ambergris, styrax, pink pepper, Peru balsam, cinnamon, cedarwood, and musk. So as you can already tell, they shut off a couple of those other notes like the cinnamon, etc., and some of the other woodsy notes and green notes even. And for that reason, it makes it less of a rough-edged fragrance and more refined. If you're one for refinement, then the Extrait will be for you. If you're one that likes protruding notes, if you're one that likes notes that actually stand out and give you some more projection, a little bit more to sniff, you're gonna like the original. I think they're both fantastic. And just because the Extrait has less notes doesn't necessarily mean it's not as strong, because the Extrait version is actually an Extrait de Parfum, while the others are Eau de Parfum concentrations. And so whatever they didn't place in here, they dosed up everything else, and you can absolutely sense it. A little bit warmer, more dense, more serious, more full-bodied, but still extremely close to the original. I have to emphasize that probably only a couple of different accords you're not gonna get, but otherwise they can absolutely be, they will be redundant, man. They will be redundant. It really comes down to refinement. With that, however, comes that lack of projection, as you will see with many of the increased strengths of fragrances. The overconcentration of certain oils can make it sit flatter on your skin and not project as much, at least for the most part. And that's kind of what happens with the Extrait version. Yes, it smells more full-bodied or, you know, etc., but it doesn't project nearly as much. It's not going to diffuse as fast, and for that reason, it's not going to be projecting as much as the original one will. However, it still projects, it still smells amazing, it's still a room filler. As with the original fragrance, which is pretty damn much a room filler, in my opinion, for the projection, this one does pretty much the same thing. It will scale it down just a little bit, but still, for the most part, the performance on this was like a solid 9 hours of total longevity. Still never really getting too much of a beastly fragrance out of any of these. And in terms of the projection, this one is also a room filler. It's not one that I feel is fair to tell you guys how far it projects, because it's genuinely a room filler. You will fill like the entire area. So beastly in projecting, but not necessarily beastly in terms of longevity. And the projection wise for the Lune Filine, the Extrait or the original, is also pretty damn good in terms of the sillage goes. So occasions for this one, I would reserve this for even more special occasions. In terms of the versatility, if I place this on a 5, I would place this one at like a 3 or a 4, because it's a lot more serious. It's a lot more of like the super, you know, just rich, serious, dark, resinous style fragrance. Think of other rich smelling fragrances like tobacco, vanille, etc. I'm not saying this smells anything like that, or baby cat. That's the territory of fragrances that it's in. And ladies, if you enjoy those style fragrances, you can easily rock these two as well. I find that the Extrait might work for the ladies a little bit more, and the Rouge Sarai, I think as well, a lady can rock, but it does lean heavily on that musky wood style fragrance DNA. I personally wouldn't recommend it for the ladies, but even with like Lune Filine, I wouldn't recommend for the ladies. I just think that personally, these are definitely more masculine leaning. But if you enjoy those style, then consider grabbing a sample or just go for the blind buy. Either way, they smell fantastic. So easily my number 3 fragrance right here. So if I had to rate it, I would give it a solid 8.75, almost a 9. In the number 4th place, it's going to be Riviera Drive. Another beautiful bottle as well with a different color. This one's like this blue, sky blue, or whatever it is, white cap. I freaking love it, man. I love it. And then those flakes, they actually do spray on you, but you can easily brush them off for all of them. Riviera Drive has notes at the top of lemon, rosemary, and marjoram. In the mid, we've got absinthe, cedar, patchouli, and in the base, there's also cedar, musk, and cashmere. This is another fragrance I really enjoyed in the opening. It's very similar to a lot of other fresh, aromatic style fragrances that I truly enjoy. Right away, whenever I see the note of absinthe and some of those aromatics, I think Polo Red Parfum. Except this obviously smells higher quality than that, but still in a similar family or category of fragrances for sure. It's fresh, it's rosemary, it's aromatic, and it's got that specific note of absinthe, which they both have in common. I won't say that this is going to be the same quality of that. This does smell like it's a little bit natural or more natural, but you definitely have to enjoy herbal fragrances, because that's the most that it's going to hit you with. It's like this lemon rosemary style drink. It's maybe this lime or lemon lime style mojito or wine cooler, whatever you want to call it. I don't drink, so I wouldn't really know that much, and there goes my tester strip. However, afterwards, what it really turns down into is just this basic cedarwood style fragrance. There isn't anything magical about this except for that opening where it gives you that rosemary lemon lemon, and absinthe combination, and after that, it kind of dries down into something relatively simple. I don't want to say underwhelming, but just simple is the right word. It's still not a bad fragrance by any means, and it does smell relatively expensive, but also familiar at the same time. So that's not all that bad. The scent profile in itself, I would have given it like an 8, maybe a 7.75, I think is a little bit more fair. But where this one really drops the ball is going to be in terms of the performance. I sprayed this on about 8 times, and I mean, I could smell it for up until hour 4.5, maybe 5. So it's really underwhelming in my opinion. But I was expecting that considering the mid to dry down and the notes. It's just musk, patchouli, and cashmerean. And so for a lot of people, they're gonna go nose blind, either A, nose blind to it, or B, it's just like an aura at the end of the fragrance. It just smells like clean linen, just smells woodsy and a little bit clean. There isn't much of a base for this one to really protrude and hit you in the face with. So when seen in that perspective and in that light, you can absolutely appreciate it in that retrospect. So it's one that you want to smell for just like that hour or two, and then you just want to have a clean, nice, woody, masculine style aura that's relatively fresh as well. That's the perfect occasion for something like this. So almost literally like you're in California and you're going for a drive or something like that. It's not something that, you know, you want to like turn heads per se, but you want to smell clean. And arguably at that point, is it worth spending the price tag on this one? If for the right price, I would say yeah. And generally speaking, you can find this for under 140 bucks. And when you compare it to other fragrances that you get at like Macy's, etc., Polo Red Parfum I think is fantastic, and I actually might get a little bit more longevity, but still quality difference is absolutely there. And for the right price, this is still worth it in my opinion. You really have to factor it in for whatever you value in the fragrance. For me, performance is everything. This did fall short, but the scent profile was nothing short of beautiful. So overall score for this, I'd give it like a 7.5, nothing more than that. Scent profile deserves a little bit more, but the performance left me craving a lot more. Last but not least, this is Riviera Sunrise, another freshie, except this one was pretty, I don't want to say unique, but it was different. It was a different experience for me. It opens up with a lot of citruses, a lot of this white floral, and it's very indolic in nature. But to my nose, I also got something that was very strong in the green notes. And I'm not the craziest fan about green fragrances, but then I started to notice something that it has in common with a favorite fragrance of mine. Before we go there, let's talk about some of the notes. At the top, we've got Italian mandarin, and then we've got orange, and then we've got lemon, and in the mid, we've got orange blossom, fig leaf, basil. In the base, we've got musk, cedar, and vetiver oil. So, opens up with a blast of citrus. It's got a fatty, for sure. This is a thick one, definitely. That orange blossom is, I mean, pretty damn indolic. It's creamy, it's very waxy. That's a center player here, for sure. It's going to be that orange blossom. All of those citruses just really helps back it up, and the orange blossom does have an undertone of some orange, so it's just this orange overload, white floral fragrance. But what throws me off just a little bit is that fig leaf. I'm not crazy about the note of fig leaf in many other fragrances. I think it just takes it too much in the realm of like green and earthy, and I'm not really the craziest in terms of like freshies that have green and earthy. I like green and earthy when it's done with like vanilla, resins, ambers, etc., but for whatever reason, it just throws me off personally. And it might be the nature of the synthetics used in the fig leaf, I'm not sure, but it just doesn't work for me. It does have an aromatic basil, which is just very slightly there, and I can get little wafts of it. And overall, it stayed pretty floral and indolic, and it dried down a little bit more woody and dropped off just a little bit more of those fig leaf, etc. But for the most part, you do have to enjoy floral, green, and citrus fragrances. That's the best way I could describe it. It does smell pretty expensive, pretty rich, but because of its white floral, fatty nature, I think it'll be more suited for the ladies. The one fragrance that I found this to very slightly resemble is Mandarino di Amalfi, except Mandarino di Amalfi doesn't nearly go as fatty as this, and I would still, I think, pick up Mandarino di Amalfi over this one for sure. It's a lot more crisp, it's more watery, it's juicier, it wears not as thick as this, but like I said earlier on, they have this whole marmalade, thick, jammy nature to a lot of their fragrances, and it does smell, or make it smell a little bit more expensive, so they concentrate a couple of notes in each of their fragrances, and I absolutely love that. And so that's why, for that reason, this is still a solid 7.5 out of 10, and the performance on this absolutely shines. Because of that fatty nature, this will last for like 8 to 10 hours, especially on clothing. Projection, it's actually pretty good, 3 to 4 feet for pretty much like 4 hours. I didn't stop smelling this one, it was everywhere. Okay, not bad. I think the only thing that for me could make it better is if it ditched that fig leaf, but a lot of people love that note of fig leaf, so if you like it, then consider this fragrance, and the best occasion for this would be like sunsets. So they hit it on the head with these sunsets. So you're on, you know, Ocean Ave during the nighttime, that's perfect. Summertime night fragrance is basically what that is. It's indolic, it's still fresh, it dries down pretty musky and woody. A great fragrance for those occasions. So the price point is also going to be anywhere from 160 and below on discounters, and at that price, come on, look at the presentations. Honestly, these are beautiful style bottles, and they're really good fragrances. I do plan on jumping into maybe about 2 or 3 more of their fragrances in the near future, but for the most part, these are the top 5 Atelier des Ors fragrances in my collection. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like, hit that subscribe button. Let me know which one of these you are most interested in picking up first, if any at all, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.